Welcome back. We're now at chapter 3 for human sexuality, hormones and sexuality. Hormones. The author of the text is quite right. Quite often, people have little to no idea what hormones are, what they do, or even why we have them. Despite what you may have believed, we all have them. They're not simply things that make people feel cranky. They're not just things that make us horny. Without hormones, we would not grow, repair, hold water, exist, and yes, we would not be sexual beings. Fortunately, we have them. Unfortunately, you may think you need to learn about them. They're all part of what we call the endocrine system. And like many of our other organ systems, the organs or glands that make up the system are not connected directly, like the circulatory system. The heart pumps through the arteries and veins. Hormones travel, though, through our body using blood as a means of transport, and they react when they find the correct body for their purpose. Our sexual organs are part of this system and produce hormones as well. The testicles produce primarily testosterone, and ovaries produce primarily estrogen and progesterone, although all men and women have small amounts of these hormones. The testicles and ovaries cannot produce these all by themselves and require hormones from other glands to trigger them too. And those other glands require triggers from other glands. And it all turns into a big loop of them relying on one another. It's what we call a feedback loop. Each gland relies on information from another to regulate the body, and most of the time they work well. Now, how does this relate to human sexuality? Afraid you're in an anatomy and physiology class right now? Bear with me. It'll make sense. And gentlemen, for those of you who do not believe you need to know about the menstrual cycle, you do. I know this chapter focuses on women, but that's because when it comes to reproduction, we've got a lot more going on. And since we have to carry a child as well as produce eggs, and if you want to be fathers someday, you need to know about this. If your intent is to avoid being fathers, you need to know about this, perhaps even more than the potential fathers out there. So all of you should read about the menstrual cycle. Even if you've been living it for years, you can always learn more and realize we are not the same with our cycles, although certain things can make our cycles the same. Many of you loathe talking about menstruation and don't even like thinking about it. Why? I will not try to convince you that cramps are fun or menstruation is tidy. I will try to convince you that menstrual blood will not make crops die, wine go bad, and men will definitely not contract a woman's condition. These are beliefs, however, which have continued to some ways to this day. I've had students who were convinced you could not make tomato sauce while menstruating, it would be horrible, and seen others who believed you could not bathe while menstruating. And of course, sex while menstruating is simply out of the question. One student admitted to me that while menstruating, her partner would only have anal intercourse. Let us review. Menstrual discharge is tissue, mucus, and blood, which is renewed once a month and is very clean. In the anus, we find feces, the stuff your body is trying very hard to get rid of because it's unclean. Not to mention the fact that if you're trying to avoid pregnancy, this is the best time to have sex. As mentioned in the quote by Gloria Steinem in your text, if this was a male thing, it would be revered. As it is, we are told not to talk about it. Over 50% of the world population does it, and without them having it, we wouldn't have anyone. We have never seen a man in a grocery store who was embarrassed to buy toilet paper, for example. In fact, once I saw a man bragging about the very large dump he was going to have as soon to use the toilet paper. However, I have seen men purchase beer, chips, meat, potatoes, and oh, those tampons under there? Well, might as well buy them. And I'm not just picking on the men here. You ladies are just as guilty. When you think about menstruation, try not to think about the bad things. Just focus on the wonderful feeling you have when your partner is late, then it arrives. Then you suddenly enjoy menstruation. But do read up on the other problems with menstruation. Knowing about these can save your fertility and save your life and give suggestions on how to help with the worst symptoms of PMS and dysmenorrhea. And note that one way to help with those painful cramps is a good old orgasm. Men, as I mentioned, have a simpler hormone loop to regulate sperm production. There's no monthly variation. There's a slight variation each day. So while I'm sorry we're not talking about you a lot in this chapter, be happy it's because you're not menstruating. Whether you're male or female, hormones play an important role in your sexual desire, and one hormone in particular, testosterone. The rest are necessary for normal functioning. Testosterone, while important for us all, is not the only hormone we need for desire and sexuality. And in the next chapter, we'll see how all of these things work together to produce what we know as the sexual act.